single astonishing sentence. It wasn't the billionaire's handshake or the IPO launch that changed my life. It was the rusted, forgotten photograph of a Chicago slaughterhouse worker, a man I never knew, that unlocked a $500 million secret hidden in plain sight of the American dream. The algorithm of the dream. The story of Elias Vance begins not with a splash of Silicon Valley venture capital, but with a silent, profound emptiness, the kind that settles over a man who has built everything he thought he wanted, only to realize the blueprint was fundamentally flawed. It was a cold, indifferent Tuesday in January, and Elias, at 38, was staring out from the 42nd floor of his San Francisco office. Below, the city was a meticulous, glittering map of success, a city he had conquered. He was the co-founder and CEO of Synaptica, a predictive logistics company recently valued at $1.2 billion. His net worth was an unspendable 8 figures. He drove a silent electric car, owned a minimalist penthouse overlooking the bay, and his biggest professional worry was whether to accept a buyout offer from Amazon or Google. By all measurable metrics of the American experiment, Elias Vance was the winner. But the emptiness was a gravitational pull. It had started subtly, a low hum after he sold his first major chunk of stock, money that felt abstract, unearned. It intensified during the board meetings, where every conversation was about scaling and metrics, never meaning. The truth was, Elias had become an algorithm himself, predictable, efficient, and devoid of soul. The breaking point arrived not through a dramatic failure, but a mundane inheritance. His great-aunt Cecilia, the last living relative on his mother's side, passed away in a small, weathered bungalow outside of Omaha, Nebraska. Elias hadn't seen her in 20 years. He flew out of duty, not grief. The house was a shrine to an America Elias barely remembered. Dust motes danced in beams of weak Midwestern sun. Amongst the ceramic angels and crocheted doilies, his attention snagged on a shoebox labeled 1920s, the Old Country and New Start. Inside, nestled beneath a handful of dried-out corsages, was a photograph. It was sepia-toned, cracked in the corners, and thick with the smell of old paper. It showed a man, grim-faced, standing in front of a dark, industrial doorway. He was wearing a blood-stained apron and holding a heavy, curved knife. Behind him, the sign was barely legible, but Elias's eyes, trained to decode complex data, traced the faint, cursive script, Swift & Co., Chicago Union Stockyards. This was the origin story. Not the shiny, optimized narrative he told investors, but the raw, unpolished, and brutal truth of a life sacrificed for a single purpose, to lay the foundation for a future he would never see. A life of blood and bone, not algorithms and data streams. The moment Elias held that photograph, the $1.2 billion valuation of Synaptica seemed like an absolute zero. The hidden, astonishing information was not in the data he analyzed daily, but in the untold story of the man in the apron. And the biggest secret was this. Ilya Vansky, the humble slaughterhouse worker, had not just worked for Swift & Co. He had not just survived the horrific conditions of the stockyards, a place Upton Sinclair described as an economic hellscape that fueled the nation. He had, in his illiteracy and relentless drive, created a financial instrument, a kind of unwritten futures contract that helped fund the entire tumultuous expansion of the Omaha Rail Yards, a piece of infrastructure that would later be key to the very logistics industry Elias now dominated. The rusted photograph was the key to a truth Elias had to chase, a chase that would take him from the steel canyons of Manhattan to the forgotten homesteads of the Dust Bowl, and reveal a pattern of sacrifice and innovation that defined the real American success story. A story far more valuable and complex than any he had ever coded.
It was a story of how his family's first dollar was earned and why the $500 million secret remained dormant, waiting for an heir to finally ask, who was the real founder of the Vance family fortune?